And you'll see now up here is the name of the template that I'm working with. Now, something else about setup mode is setup mode has this chart button. So the chart button allows you to add alternate time frames. So if I was working with, right now my chart's set to a 211 tick chart, but if I wanted to work with a 15-minute chart, this is where I could add a 15-minute time frame to work with. So, all right, so I'm going to hit OK there, and I'm going to start working in real-time mode. So I'll hit OK in the indicator window. All right, and now, for some reason I have two buttons up here. Interesting. All right. So now this, clicking on the button up top here, you can see it has the template name on it. It brings up what we call real-time mode. And you'll see the difference between setup mode and real-time mode is that the chart button no longer exists here. But in real-time mode, whenever I make a change to the solvers, essentially to this template, BloodHound updates in real time. And so you'll see BloodHound updating as we move along here. Just a sec. I see Randy's asking a question here. And yes, so for those of you who are new to our workshops, any kind of question takes precedence over the workshop in general. So we like to try and, if you guys have questions, we do like to answer them during the workshop. That way everybody else can kind of benefit from your question as well. All right, so Randy is asking that, once you leave setup mode and go to real-time mode, can you go back to setup mode and add another chart time? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So let's just say I've kind of done some work here, added a solver there. So then I can exit out of this, and if I need to, I can go back into setup mode by going to the indicators window, and then click on BloodHound, and then go back to the template name. And then here you see that we're back in setup mode because I have the chart button. I can add another chart, and then if I wanted to, I could add a 30-minute chart. All right, and click OK, and then go back into looks like my chart has an issue. Well, as long as it keeps on going, I'll keep on going. All right. And, didn't show up. You know what, let me build another chart. I'm not sure what happened to my chart here. So I'm going to start a new chart. I noticed that when I started the GoToMeeting webinar, something weird happened to my chart, and I didn't think it was going to affect anything, but it looks like it is. So pardon me just for a moment while I get a new chart started here. what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this template. So I'm just going to save it. And then I'm going to bring up BloodHound in, bring it up in real-time mode. All right, I need to give it a chart name. I mean a template name. And we can see here, if I scroll down, I'll find today's workshop template. There we go. And just to recap, before I had a 30-minute, another 30-minute time frame there. All right, there we go. Doesn't look like loading now the chart solved my issue. Well, I don't want to restart Ninja. So we'll just work through this. All right. So let me put my Bollinger Bands back on the chart. All right. Hope the rest of you guys are keeping cool this summer. I know up here in Idaho, our weather's been pretty good. We haven't had that scorching heat towards the middle eastern part of the country. It's pretty bad out there. All right, I'm going to change my time frame. All right, now bring up BloodHound setup mode. All right, so what we're going to be using the Bollinger Band for is to try and detect consolidation. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Bollinger Band, essentially when the two bands, the upper band and the lower band here, when they pull together, when they start to constrict towards each other, essentially that's telling you that there's consolidation within price action. And then as price moves, you can see that the bands begin to separate again. So as volatility comes back into the market by the swing points widening, you can see that the bands begin to widen. All right. So once again, the bands widen here, and then as price pulled back and then began to consolidate again, you can see the bands are pulling in towards each other. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try and detect when this band begins to narrow like this. All right, so what I always like to do is to name my solvers so I know what they're doing. And for this particular condition, I'm going to use an ATR to determine when the Bollinger Band begins to narrow. Normally, I like to work in ticks because it's easier for us to visualize. It's much easier to see visually what's going on, when you're learning these ideas. But if I was trying to detect this narrowing in tick, and ticks, I mean, it can certainly be done, but it has less of a practical, less practical use, I should say. So if I use ATRs, so what I mean by using ATRs is you can see the large amount when I'm looking at the differences. And so when I'm looking at the differences of A and B, the way I'm going to set this up is the upper band is going to be A and the lower band is going to be B. And I'm going to be looking at it in terms of ATRs. What that does is that will create a measurement that's kind of universal across time frames, and I'll demonstrate that. All right. So let me load up the indicator. So you can see when I click in the indicator field here, the button comes up, and that allows me to select all the indicators on my system, at least all the indicators that will work with BloodHound. So if you know you have an indicator on your system but it doesn't show up in the list, it's because that particular indicator doesn't have any kind of plot or data out of it that BloodHound can analyze. So I've got my Bollinger here, and I can double click on it and it will drop it down to the window down here, and I need to set my period so that it matches what's on my chart. All right. And so indicator A is going to be the upper band. And now let me close that up, and now indicator B is going to be the lower band. All right. Don't forget to change your period. Now what I'm looking for is let me actually set this up here. It'll help explain what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for when the upper band and the lower band are within 4 ATRs of each other. So you can see by default, this solver is set to typically A. It's looking for A being greater than B, but I don't want A to be greater than B. I actually want I'm looking for a similarity here. I'll set this to 0, set that to 0, set this to 1, and actually I'll be looking for A being less than B, so set that to 1. Actually, let me demonstrate this first, the use of neutral. And let me scroll through here and take a look. I'm going to do a test just to make sure everything's working here. Yeah. Well, shoot. Looks like I need to restart NinjaTrader here. All right. So let me shut this down and restart NinjaTrader. And while that's happening, I'll see there's a bunch of questions that popped up here. So let me get some questions answered. But let's see. All right. Yeah, thanks, Randy, for those suggestions. Now, I'm not exactly what happened, but I noticed that when I started the webinar software, that's when NinjaTrader went kaput. So, 60, huh, Sam? Are you bragging? Yeah, I'd love it if it was 60 around here. Let's see, Phil Levy, you're asking what indicator displays the narrowing and widening of the BBs? What indicator displays the... I'm not sure what you mean. Phil, do you mean like what solver displays the narrowing and widening? I mean, because the Bollinger Band itself displays the widening and narrowing. So, Phil, maybe you can kind of clarify your question there. Hey, Noel's in the room today. Welcome, Noel. All right, it's good to know. Noel made his money for the day. I guess, Noel, that's about how much fireworks cost these days, so I guess you'll break even after tomorrow, after you buy your fireworks. Let's see. Yeah, Randy, you're making a comment about price barely getting outside the 2 ATRs. Well, yeah, we're not actually looking for price to break the ATRs because that would be essentially the opposite of consolidation. So to kind of stick with today's theme, we're looking for consolidation. So it doesn't really matter what you set the Bollinger Band. Let's see, I forget what it's called, Bollinger Band offset to. So, all right, Phil. Sorry. Let me read Phil's question here. Yeah, Phil, I'm not familiar with that indicator, so I can't really answer your question. That'd be an interesting indicator to take a look at. Yeah, it might offer some more a unique way of looking at the Bollinger Band narrowing and stuff for NinjaTrader. So, all right. So here, now we can see things are working normally here. So let me bring up BloodHound window, bring up setup mode. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this solver, go back to this one, and bingo, there we go. So now things are working normally. So we can see that when the two bands are within 4 ATRs of each other, that BloodHound gives us. It gives us both a long and a short, because we're just detecting consolidation, and consolidation doesn't tell us what direction the market's going to go. So, if your part of your system says that you need consolidation before looking for a breakout, then what you need is, so you don't know what direction that breakout's going to occur with the consolidation. So you need BloodHound to give you both a long output and a short output. So that way, you've got, a signal going both directions, regardless of what direction price breaks out to. So now I'm going to demonstrate the ATR use of it. So right now the chart is set to 200 ticks. Now if I put this on, and just to kind of take a look at how big the price, how long the price bars are, how wide they are. You can see my chart is set up to that. Every grid is 10 ticks. So each bar, I kind of guesstimate that each bar is averaging around 10 ticks or so. So let me just adjust this to a 1 minute. And on a 1 minute, the bars look like they're a little narrower. And here, let me back up to the 211 tick, and so just to kind of get an idea of the width of this channel. So we're about up here at 0.40, and we're down here at 0.16, so we're about 25 ticks wide, and that's when this consolidation was determined. And so right here we're about 0.22 up to 0.5, so that's almost 30 ticks. So let's go back to the 1 minute and see how wide these are. So this width right here is about 0.08. Let's just say 0.1 up to 0.5. So that's 40 ticks width. So when this consolidation got determined. So so what that's kind of telling me is actually, it's weird. The bars look a little narrower in some cases when you're using a 1 minute, but they are actually wider than the tick chart was showing. Now, to make the bars even wider or taller, I'm going to go to a 5 minute chart. Let me stretch this out. And so here we're at about 0.25 to 0.65, so 40 ticks wide is when this area was detected. So what I'm trying to demonstrate to you, that using the ATRs, the width of the detection of the channel narrowing, consolidation using ATRs will widen or narrow depending on your time frame, depending on how long, depending on the length of the bars. So let's go to a 15-minute chart. And so measuring this first bar, we're down here like about 0.10, and up here 0.9, so that's 80 ticks when this was detected. So 80 ticks on the 15-minute chart, versus the I think it was like 25 ticks using the 210 tick chart. So that's why I wanted to use ATRs for this. All right, let me set this back to a 211 tick. Now if we look at this, once again, so we had an 80 tick width on the channel when it was detected consolidation, or basically detected 4 ATRs, and now we're at about 0.2 up to 0.5, so this is about 30 ticks width. All right. See, there's some questions coming in. Let me just kind of scan through these real quick. All right, this looks like some comments. Well, let's see. Xavier has a question. How do you set up the ATRs? All right, let me bring that back up here. Okay, Xavier, so you'll notice that in essentially most of the solvers have an area in the comparison solver. It's the section is called difference, because we're comparing one data set, which is indicator A, to indicator B data set. And so that doesn't necessarily have to be an indicator. You could be comparing price, the closing price, or volume, or the swings, or the linear regression channel. And so when you're making a comparison, you're essentially wanting to know the distance between indicator A and indicator B. And so this section here, the differences, allows you to set kind of what difference, what targets you're looking for, what kind of separation you're looking for. So if you open up one of these here, you'll see there's a measured in setting, and you can measure in either points, ticks, Renko bricks, or ATRs. Right? So the default is ticks, but I went in and changed it to ATRs. Now if I add another solver on here, like the bar length, I can add the bar length down here. And the bar length, actually, I think this is one of the few solvers that actually defaults to the ATR. So if I add the slope solver, take a look at that. So you'll see in the maximum slope and minimum slope, it defaults to ticks. And if I add the comparison solver, once again, the default setting for the comparison solver is in ticks. And so I just open this setting up and set it to ATRs. Let me delete some of these off of here. Just kind of give a quick explanation. So the reason why the bar length is set to ATRs is, just for the reason that I kind of demonstrated here in looking for the Bollinger Band consolidation in ATRs, and that is, regardless of what your chart time frame is, whether it be in ticks or minutes, ATRs essentially kind of the same setting essentially works broadly across whatever kind of time period you set your chart to. So So actually, so the bar length actually is another way that you can look for consolidation as well. So let me turn off the comparison solver, and we'll look at the bar length solver. And so let's figure out how to use this to try and determine when price action is kind of consolidating just in itself, just by looking at the length of the bars. So you see I have two output settings here. So we're looking for when the bar length begins to narrow. So we don't want to look for at or above. We do want to look for at or below. And let's see what 0.5 gives us. Now, you never really kind of know what values to use at first. It takes a little bit of putting together some systems and experimenting to kind of know what kind of values to start with here. So don't worry if you don't know what value. Just throw some values in there and see what you get. That's really one of the main purposes behind BloodHound, is how quickly you can just experiment with your system and experiment with settings. All right, so I can just set that to 1, and you can see there's a lot more bars here that are below 1 ATR. In other words, ATR, average true range. Right, so when BloodHound gives us an output here, is marking the chart, it's telling us that the bar length is at 1 DATR or smaller. So you can see these long bars here are not being marked. They're not being painted. There's no outputs. So if I wanted to look for some real serious consolidation, I could look for 1/4 of an ATR, and yeah, not really seeing any bars that narrow. Even this guy right here, the value of BloodHound here is about 0.8. Close, it almost painted the background. So maybe if I go to 0.3, see what we get. Still not quite enough. Set that to 0.5. There we go, or 0.4. So there you go. We got this one guy to get painted right here. That's a pretty small bar. That's how many ticks that is. It's only 3 ticks wide. That's pretty narrow. So it looks like, half an ATR is probably somewhat reasonable. But you can see it's not marking a lot on the chart. So it may not be very useful for a system. So we may need to up this. Let's try 0.8. Yeah, there you go, 0.8. A little more marked on the chart. So this, so using the bar length, as a standalone isn't much use, as you can see, because it's just kind of sporadic and there's not much consistency. Of course, that's just just like price action, not very consistent, but it is marking, the really short bars. So using this solver in conjunction with some other solvers, would probably give you the results you're looking for. What we can see right here, is a bunch of small bars in a row, short length bars. So as a standalone kind of condition, obviously it doesn't give you much value, but maybe in conjunction with some of other conditions, this might work good. All right, so we looked at using ATRs to look at consolidation. Now I'm going to use show you another way to use the comparison solver to look for consolidation. So essentially let me try and find somewhere on the chart here a good example of what we're going to be looking for next. Here we go. So let me mark the chart. All right, so you can see the lower band is rising and the upper band is falling. All right, so the two bands are coming closer and closer together. So they're constricting with each other. So I'm going to use the comparison solver to detect this restricting pattern here. All right, so the first one, essentially, just look for, the overall width of the Bollinger Band. Didn't matter if, what direction the Bollinger Bands were going. Just look for, the overall width. And now we're going to be looking for the Bollinger Band lines to be narrowing towards each other. All right. So let me add another solver on here, and let me I'll set up my indicator. And change the period. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to be comparing the upper band line to itself. So essentially what I'm looking for is I'm looking for, the band to be falling. So if this bar right here, say this bar was my current bar, I'm going to be comparing it to one bar back, right, to see if this was the current bar. I'm going to be looking to see if it's let's see, the Bollinger Band, if the value of the band is lower than the previous bar. And because it's lowering, essentially what that'll do is give me a short condition. So I'm going to be using the upper band to detect a short condition, and on the lower band, because the lower band is going to be rising, I'm going to be looking for a long condition. So I'm going to use the lower band to detect long conditions. So I'm going to go and play around with this for a little bit so you kind of get the idea, but let me get this set up here. Alright, so once again I'm looking for the lower band to be rising, which essentially when something's rising, that's generally a long condition. And I'm looking for the upper band to be falling, which in general is a short condition. So that's why I have these set this way. Now the next, and then what we're going to be doing is we're comparing the current bar to one bar back. So I'm going to set the displacement to 1. And so that what that is doing is that is indicator A, the values here is the current bar, and indicator B is looking one bar back. And so we can see here that you can see the longs and the shorts are both painting when the bands are narrowing. And we can see that when the bands are widening here, that there is no output from BloodHound. Now, typically, most systems are not looking for consolidation. Typically, right, you're looking for an expansion of the Bollinger Bands, telling you that there's a trend potentially taking place. So what you could do, in this case, you could invert this, right? And now we have the opposite. So when the Bollinger Band is constricting, there's no output. And when the Bollinger Band is widening, then you get both a long and a short output. And so, of course, you'd have to use this in conjunction with, other solvers, other conditions of your system to determine, exactly what direction you want to be trading in. So let me put this back to, set this back to false. And the other, it's kind of a side effect of this. We can see that when both bands are moving in the same direction, BloodHound gives us an output in that direction. So as both Bollinger Bands are falling, all we have is just a single short. And we can see that on this one bar here where there's no output. It's hard to see, but the upper band is actually rising a little bit. And then as the upper band begins to fall again, then we get just a short output. And it's quite apparent right here in this section that both bands are rising. And we can see that all we have is a long output. This was kind of a unintended output that that I kind of discovered when I was just going through this real quick last night. It's kind of neat. All right, so that kind of takes care of analyzing the Bollinger Band. And next what I'm going to move on to is looking at going back to looking at price again. And so what I'm going to be doing is looking at the lows. Essentially, I'm going to be looking at the lows rising and the highs of the bar falling. So just like we're looking at the Bollinger Band where the lower band is rising and the upper band is falling, I'm going to be doing that for the price of the bar. So I'm going to be looking for the low of the bar to rise and the high of the bar to fall. So actually, let me turn this off. Let me put that indicator on the chart first. And this is also going to give you a little sneak peek of BloodHound 1.5, which I'm running right now. And so hopefully you all have BloodHound 1.4, and with that you have the SI swings highs and lows. Well, we've actually changed this indicator, and we're now calling it the SI chameleon. And the big significant change to this let me add it to the chart. There we go. Is that you can now use an alternate instrument. So if I turn this true, you see this section just opened up. So if I set it back to false, it disappears. Set it to true. And so this allows you to actually analyze another instrument's data. So I can go in here and select an instrument. All right, so I could compare the current month of the CL contract, to the next month out or to 2 months out. And so this indicator will give me the price values of whatever instrument I set here. But when 1.5 is released, we'll definitely we'll do some demonstrations on this during one of the workshops. But for now, I just want to be looking at the highs and the lows. So I'm going to set this indicator up so we can easily see it on the chart. Right, you can see that this indicator allows you to analyze other price data, right? So the weighted price, the typical price, the mid price, and the median. If you want to understand what these are, if you pull up NinjaTrader's help documentation, in the help documentation, if you search for these words, it'll give you the formula that NinjaTrader uses to calculate these values. Right? So BloodHound actually isn't calculating these. These values are provided from Ninja, from within Ninja. Just as you can look at the open, high, low, and close of each bar, NinjaTrader also calculates these other price values, the median, the typical, and the weighted. And so the formulas, once again, are in the help documentation. All right, let me click OK. All right, so now we can see the highs are marked with the green line, the lows are marked with the red line. And let me kind of look through here and find a point that's going to meet the conditions I'm looking for here. Well, I don't see anything right off. This might be better if I look at a minute chart. Well, let me just go ahead and set up the solver, and we'll let BloodHound show us where it's at. All right, just a second. It looks like Han has a question here. Yeah, Han, we're working on that, and that's actually going to be, we're actually going to, in future release, we haven't determined when, but we do have, we're going to introduce a new type of solver, function solvers, which will incorporate mathematics and other various functions like a counter, a counting function, so you can count, how many conditions have occurred. Like, so if you're waiting for 3 crossovers to occur before you really want your, your signal, then we'll have a counter that will count those. And then on the third, on the third crossover, it would give you an output, and we'll probably bring along a timer function node as well, so you can time things. So yeah, that's going to come along with another significant upgrade to BloodHound. So thanks for the suggestion, though. Keep them coming. All right, so to look at this comparison of the highs and lows, essentially, that is, let's see. Yeah, it's almost going to be the same thing as this solver right here, which actually, let me give this a name. And so this solver was looking at the Bollinger Band constriction. And so what I can do is I can copy this, since it's pretty much set up almost the way we want it. Let me turn it on. And then I just need to change my indicators. And so once again, I'm looking for the highs to give us a short when they're falling, and I'm looking for the lows to give us a long when they're rising. So I'm going to set the lows. So I'm setting the lows to give us a long output when the lows are rising, and setting the highs to give us a short output when it's falling. So we can see there's not too many bars where that actually occurs. It's kind of hard to see. Let me widen these bars out, make it a little easier. So we can see here's one particular bar where we can see we have a long and a short firing at the same time. We can see the high was falling and the low was rising. We see there's another bar here. So we have a long and a short output at the same time. You can see both is painted. Now, of course, when both the highs and the lows are rising, we're getting just a long output. And when they're both falling together, we're getting a short output. So, hey, this almost looks like a trading system in itself, right? We all want to go short when everything's falling and go long when everything's rising, right? So, and then we can see where BloodHound's not providing any kind of output, we can see that that's because the low is falling and the highs are rising. So in other words, you know, price, the length of the bar is expanding. So when the length of the bar is expanding, there's no output. And when the length of the bars are contracting, we have both a long and a short output. All right, so let me now I'm going to show another way to look at this with just isolating it so that all you get is both painting at the same time, and we're going to filter out the shorts only and the longs only. Well, all right, let me copy this. Oh, let me rename this here. All right, just taking a look at my notes, trying to remember how I did this last night. So both. There we go. So now sometimes even I just kind of have to play around with this until I get the results that I want. And well, actually, this isn't quite the results I want. So let's see. Let me just continue to play around with this. Oh, let's see. Let me set that back to the way I had it. So once again, that's the beauty of BloodHound is you can change things around very quickly. So if you're not sure, how to do something, you can just quickly go around and change things up until eventually you kind of stumble across the condition that you're looking for. Sometimes just overthinking it just takes too long, and sometimes you can just discover what you want just by going around and playing with the various results. All right, let me set that to 0. Oh, here we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this solver up into 2 pieces here. Right, so once again, I'm looking for a short when the highs are falling, there we go. So I'm going to give this a name. I'm not sure what to call it, but essentially I'm looking at the highs on this solver. And I'm going to copy this solver and then look at the lows. And let me turn the other solver off. Okay. That's not quite what I'm looking for. Let me just go back to looking at the highs here. And okay. So there we go. I'm on the right track. So I can see here, I'm just kind of analyzing this section right here. So when the highs are falling, I'm getting both an output on the long and the short. And now I need to switch over to looking at the lows. And when the lows are rising, I want the same effect. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let me go through this one at a time. All right, so I set the solver up, and we're looking at essentially the current bar, and then we're looking one bar back, doing a comparison. Right, so let me put an arrow on here as a marker. So if this is the current bar where the arrow is, we're comparing this high point price right here to one bar back, right, and we're looking for it to fall. Right, so we're comparing the current bar, which is the displacement of 0, which is marked by the arrow, and we're looking one bar back. So we're displacement of 1 bar, right, and we're looking for the high to be falling. Right, so with the output, so on the long output, when A is less than B, in other words, A is marked by the arrow, this bar is less than B, right? B is the previous bar back. We can see that the high is higher, so it's greater than the current bar. Then we're going to get a long output. And the same with the short. We're going to get a short output as well with the same condition. And now when I'm looking at the lows, let me move my arrow. Just a second. Need to cough. Sorry about this. Okay, so if the arrow is marking our current bar, then what we're looking at is for a long output, we're looking at A being greater than B. So A is marked by the arrow, and indicator B being 1 bar back. It's going to be the 1 bar back, which is lower. So we can see that A, the low, is greater than 1 bar back, being B. And so so we're getting a long output and a short output when this condition is met. Now what I need to do is AND them together. So we can see if I turn it both on, essentially, there's just a continuous output from BloodHound. It's not quite what we want. So I'm going to use the logic board here to AND both of those conditions together. Add the high comparison and the low comparison. I'm going to AND them together. And let's well, I thought it was going to mark this bar, but it's not. So I'm going to go through debugging this and see what's happening here. So what I'm looking for is we can see that the high here is falling and the low is rising. And so this is the bar that we want to be marked. We want this type of condition to be marked. So let me look at each solver. So I'm going to take this solver's leader and plug it right into the result node. So I'm only looking at this solver. And oh, I see. Okay. Let's see. Oh, there's my problem. I'm not looking at only the highs. So check that one. Yep, put that one back both to the highs. And this happened because I copied one of the previous solvers. And I didn't go in here. All right, so let me, sorry, I'm going kind of fast here. So let me go back to the solver here that's looking at the highs. Since this solver is only looking at the highs, I needed to go in and set this indicator up so that the solver is only looking at the highs for both longs and short outputs. And I need to do that for both indicator A and indicator B. Make sure that I'm only looking at the highs. All right, now we can see this bar here is marked with a long output and a short output. So now I need to do the same thing with the low. So this solver here should only be looking at the low price. And because I copied the previous solver, yep, so we can see that it has the high selected here. So I need to select the low. And I need to do the same thing with indicator B. And now let's plug this solver in. So you can see that only this solver, we're only looking at this solver because it's plugged right into the result node. And now we can see once again where the arrow is. We have a long and a short output. All right, so now if I connect the AND node, bingo. This is what we're looking for. So we can see on this bar here, price is falling. I mean, the high is falling and the low is rising. And let's see. This one's a little easier to see. You can see the high is falling and the low is rising. Let's see if this occurs for any significant number of bars. Let's try a tick chart. See if a tick chart makes an improvement. Well, as we can see, this condition doesn't occur very often, at least not with the CL. Who knows? Maybe on some other instruments it might occur more often, but you know, this is, I guess, this idea is more conceptual than it is practical. I'm going to see if I can find an area here where I can get a little more advanced, and what I can do is I can smooth out the high price, and I can smooth out the low price, and see if we can get more bars that meet this condition if we smooth out the high and the lows. So let me just kind of scan through here, see if I can find a spot that might be doing that. Well, I'm not really seeing anything. Shoot. Looks like, if anything, I'm seeing the opposite effect occur more often. We can see here that price is expanding. So let's figure out how to look for the opposite effect. Look for these price bars to be expanding here. All right. First, let me take a moment to see if there's any new questions here. Let's see. So Steve is asking, given this info, what do you determine? Okay, what do you deduce from this? Well, see, I guess, really this is just kind of in theory. You can see on the chart it doesn't really have much practical use, but you could say take the same condition and apply them to indicators. So you could take the same condition, and instead of looking at the high and the low of the price bar, right, you could be looking at the upper and lower bands of the Bollinger Band. So, or you could be looking at the Keltner, the Keltner bands, or you could be possibly apply this to the CCI, where say you have multiple CCIs on your chart, one of them being a fast one and one of them being a longer period one, and you could be looking for both the longer period CCI and the faster period CCI converging together. Yeah, I guess let's see, what time is it? Well, it's almost 12 o'clock. Wow. I was really hoping to make this a short one because of the holiday. So, yeah, so you know what? I'm just going to cut it off right there. I just wanted to keep this to be a short one here. And sorry for Ninja Trader crashing earlier. Kind of ate up some of the time. So if you guys, if you have any questions, I'll look through your questions here again. Randy thinks he saw that there was that on the minute chart we had two bars occurring. Let's go back to the minute chart here. Yeah, so far the minute chart just looks kind of sporadic as well. So granted, using the high and the low of the bar price, doesn't seem to have much practical use. But there's a lot of different trading systems out there, so maybe you have a system that only is looking for one bar of contraction, which is kind of like looking at candlestick patterns, where you might want to be looking for this condition. Well, I think we beat that horse enough. So just check the questions here real quick. So yeah, Randy's asking a good question, and this kind of leads into next week's workshop. Randy's question is, am I correct in assuming that BloodHound's output is readily available for strategy development? And yes, it is, Randy. If you look up on the website under the documentation section, you'll see there's significant documentation on how to use BloodHound, on how to call BloodHound in a strategy. And there are also 2 strategy templates up there right now that you can just download, that you can use as an example. So if you know how to do some ninja scripting, you can download those examples and modify them. So they've already been set up to make the appropriate calls to BloodHound, so that you can use essentially what you want to do. So once you have BloodHound set up, you want to create a logic template, and that logic template is what's called upon in the strategy. So probably if you want to use this in a strategy, I wouldn't suggest using the default name of the strategy. I would suggest renaming this to something like your entries, and if you want to use BloodHound for your exits, then make a new template, right, and call it like your exits, so that way in your strategy you'll have clearly labeled logic templates. So yeah, and you'll notice this one did not rename itself. Sometimes that happens, and that's because the chart just doesn't refresh. So if I hit F5 and bingo, then it refreshes the names on here. Right, so when you're using BloodHound in a strategy, it's good to have a clear name on your logic templates. And so next week's workshop will be showing you guys how to set up BloodHound in a strategy using the two different. Actually, I think there's going to be a third one. Jeremy's working on the third strategy template where you can define your own ATM strategy, and you can run that within the strategy. And so that's what we'll be demonstrating next week. So next week is going to be a fun one. So we've got a lot of questions about a lot of people out there wanting to build automated trading strategies, and so we'll kind of touch upon that. All right. Yeah, sounds like a lot of you guys are wanting to know how to do that. So, all right. Well, with that said, you guys have a fun and, of course, safe 4th of July holiday. And next week's workshop will we'll be doing them on the Wednesdays, normal Wednesdays. So, all right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Oh, Dan has another question. See, when is 1.5 coming out? It'll be coming out this week. So we haven't had an official release date, but when it is released, if you're on the email list, you will receive an email. So whenever we push out an update, we definitely send out an email notifying everybody with a link to download the new update. Okay, so just keep an eye in your email inbox. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.